Hello there and welcome. Today we're back with the one season challenges and I'm going to be going down the order. We've done Aston, we've done Mercedes, and next in line is actually RB if we look at car performance, and then we'll go Williams after that. But yeah, we are going to be doing RB, and I'm actually doing RB here for two reasons. For starters, it is the sixth rated team, so we do need to do them at one point. But the second reason is that Ignacio Guerrero, sorry for butchering your name, made a database edit where basically he buffs the AI considerably to make them more competitive. And I'll be testing that out probably this Wednesday or Thursday. So I'm doing this for two reasons. I want to do a one season challenge with RB, and I want to have a kind of comparison to how that difficulty change is actually affecting the game, Ignacio Guerrero's. So we're going to do RB today, and we'll do a difficult one probably in a few days' time. But yeah, RB, we start off with Sonoda and Danny Rick, both who are fairly decent-ish drivers. Danny Rick probably lacking a little bit more on the pace stats. I'll be perfectly honest, and that is a bit of an issue. We do have the six best cars, so driver shouldn't really be that much of a problem. But he does have a very, very cheap to terminate contract. And while we don't have a lot of money, only 7 million, basically once we get our car up and running, we might let Rick go and try and snatch up some of the cheaper drivers. And of course, in this year's game, the easiest to snatch option is going to be either Alonso or more likely Sainz, as he is both cheap to snatch up, and he's also a very highly rated driver. So those are basically your options. You could, of course, always try and snatch both two-star drivers if we need to. That's not really what we are going to be doing here, I'll be honest. We're going to get started with development, and as usual, I do start with the underfloor. I just feel like it's a great way to get cornering on every single stat. Now, the underfloor is actually most powerful when it comes to high-speed cornering, but the difference is so small that I just prefer to split it evenly across all stats. So that is me. But generally, if you were to focus only high-speed cornering, you can get some pretty good gains only there. But in my case, I go all three. It's just easier. Since we are using CFD time, I am going to put 6 engineers on this project. Just going to double check that I've actually done everything correctly. And I have. We're not going to rush it because we only have 7 million in the bank, but we are going to put 6 engineers on it to speed up progression. That shouldn't be a problem. Let's just put it like that. Next up, we're going to get started on the chassis. And here too, we're just going to focus on the top speed, the airflow middle, in order to get a huge amount of cornering, and also some of that top speed back. Now, I've probably said this a couple of times before, but generally, I do not care much about DRS effectiveness. It is very powerful for passing, but with the way that this year's game is, with aggressive corner passes, you can basically kind of let DRS go. I still put it on the rear wing, but everywhere else is basically a no-no. Okay, get our cooling and our cornering up on the side pods, and honestly our side pods would actually be better for top speed than cornering, as a general rule of thumb. But cornering is just more powerful than top speed, and also if we do that, we do lose a lot of cooling, which is basically just a measure of saving both money and performance by having our parts degrade slower. So that's basically why I don't do that. We'll just do these normally for now. And lastly, we'll do the suspension, and here, very simply, top speed and tire preservation. There we are. 13% extra tire preservation is going to be pretty big. Okay. With all of our parts now kind of sorted, we're going to get to jumping into the first race. And honestly, as you can see here, RB at a starting point is basically a team that can fight for 9th, 10th, maybe a little bit higher on a good day. And that's kind of what we'll be doing probably the first 3-4 races while we get our parts made. That is perfectly A-okay. Okay, sponsor package. I think we'll take this one. Basically, again, sponsor packages for me, I focus on getting race day payouts because they generally just seem to be easier to get, and also it's just a little bit easier to manage, if you will, compared to focusing on engagement packages. Because sometimes you'll get bad choices with those. And 24 million, 25 million is usually where I set the limit. We can get more money, theoretically, by picking this package over this package, about 3 million more. But it's also going to cost us a lot more in effort. So let's just not do that. It's just how I prefer to do things. Other than that, as mentioned here, we don't really care much for what we do in terms of sponsor engagements. Try and avoid do anything that gives you less staff. Those bugs have been fixed, but I like to be on the safe side, so I still try and avoid that. And anything that gives driver mentality down or driver performance rating down is something I would avoid, unless it's an affiliate. Unless, of course, you're planning to really raise that affiliate into a talent, then you are fine. But yeah, everything has been sorted. We're just going to jump into Sakir here. There's not really much we can do at this point. We are going to have probably 2-3 bad races, and that is perfectly acceptable. So the first couple of races here have gone all right. Sonoda has a grand total of 5 points, 8th and a 10th place finish. And Danny Rick has, well, not had a good start to his year. Let's just put it like that. Depending on the damage here, we might be in a little bit of trouble. But it's also things like this that can kind of spice things up a little bit. It doesn't seem to be too severe. It is, of course, components that have been destroyed. That's not really a huge deal when it's on the base components that you're given, because they're basically worthless anyways. But having a driver crash and cause problems can, of course, be problematic. Let's just put it like that. But with the new parts coming in very soon, we should be able to be a little bit more competitive in Melbourne. And here we are. Our first upgrade has been finished with the underfloor. We're going to go ahead and manufacture it right away. Now, because Australia is just 11 days away, we're actually going to rush 2 of these, so we can put 1 of them on each car. They're going to give us a fairly significant boost here, which could be the difference between scoring a few points and staying out of them, particularly if you manually play. It's going to be probably the difference maker. We're going to be simulating the race for the purpose of this series. But if you manually do it, getting the first underfloor here can be really huge. Now, next up, we have to make a choice here what we want to do with this design slot. And what I mean by that is very simple. It's the fact that we now have the second CFD period, which means that we could make the front wing, or we could make the second underfloor. In this case, I think we're just going to go ahead and get started on the front wing here, because it is such a huge source of a low-speed cornering. So that is going to be our next project. And again, the only thing we focus on the front wing here is just purely low-speed cornering, with the exception of a couple of ticks to the right for the lifespan, in order to get a little bit more out of each one. 2 to 4 versus 1 to 2 does actually make up a lot of factory time and also a lot of money over the course of a season. And even then, we're still going to get a significant boost here on our low speed, enough to be put as the best team. So let's get that cooking. It takes 44 days. We want to hopefully get it done before we go into China. So we're going to put 6 engineers on it. And as you see here, we can actually, if we really want to right now, we could rush it. That way we'll actually have it ready before we go into Japan. So let's go ahead and get that sorted. It's going to cost a little bit extra money, but in this case, we actually do have quite a bit of it due to our sponsors. So we're in a very healthy financial situation. Let's take advantage of that. Next up, we have a couple of other things to consider, namely our drivers and staff. Now, Rick and Sonoda aren't bad drivers per se, but there are better drivers available to us on the market, and particularly 2 drivers are going to be options for us. In this case, I'm talking about Alonso, who is probably a little bit too expensive for us. He has a 5 million buyout fee. He's also 42 years old. The game doesn't like you once you get close to 30. It's going to like it even less since he's 42, and he's going to start degrading pretty quick in stats. The driver that we're actually going to go for here is Science. He's also, again, on the older side, 29 years old, but he's a significant upgrade compared to, say, Danny Rick right now. So we're going to go ahead and pick him up. You could also go for Perez or Bottas, but let's be perfectly honest, they have the same issues as Alonso in terms of age, and they're also less skilled than Sainz, so there's no real reason to go for them, and if you consider that aspect. Now, for Sainz here, we're going to basically just propose a 5-year contract. We're going to put him in Danny Rick's car. We're going to start him immediately, and honestly, the only thing we need to do right now is just pay him enough that he would be happy to take the job. And 16.6 seems to be his sweet spot. Now, you don't need to give him a 5-year contract. You could give him a 3, season contract if you say want to try and switch him out with the Piastri down the line. So honestly, doesn't sound like a bad idea. So we'll give him a 3-year contract for now. And as you can see, it's going to cost us $5 million to hire him. But as I mentioned, we're in an incredibly healthy situation. And we'll give him 28 days to decide. He's probably going to decide somewhere between Japan and some time before Japan. Maybe a couple of days after Austria. But giving them 28 days doesn't necessarily mean they'll take a full month to consider the offer. Most likely they'll respond in a couple of weeks' time. It's just a deadline. So we're going to offer this contract. And that will be a pretty significant upgrade in driving capability. Now, the second thing that we're going to do as RB is actually replace our staff. And the reason for this is very, very simple. Our staff isn't the best there is. They're 80, 82s. All of them are on outgoing contracts, however. And it's actually going to be very, very cheap to replace them. Now, the main reason why we are replacing them is actually for mentality boosts. Because having good staff gives your drivers better mentality. And that is the main reason why we're doing this. And honestly, we're in such an amazing financial situation right now that it kind of would be criminal to not take advantage of it and sign these guys on 5-year contracts. We're going to pick up Cadil. As you can see, it's going to cost us $2.5 million. Not a big deal. We're going to do the same for Tondi, I believe, his other counterpart in Ferrari, because we don't want to pay $6 million for Balbo. Sorry. But yeah, as you can imagine, this is going to mainly be a huge boost to the mentality of our drivers. It's going to give our cars a little bit of a boost too. It's going to nerf our rivals a little bit. But I think it is going to be worth it just for the pace boost that the finances, that it's going to cost us quite a bit of money to hire these guys. But the mentality boost is going to be more than worth it. And that's kind of why we are doing this. Now, of course, you might consider that you can basically sign them for free next year. That's fine. You can do that if you want to. There's nothing that really stops you. But picking them up this year is definitely a worthwhile option. It's going to cost us probably $5 to $6 million to pick up all 3 of these staff members. And let's be honest, the mentality boost that they give the drivers is going to have a bigger effect on our pace than, say, do 6 designs. So this is a cost-effective way of improving our drivers that doesn't actually take any time because we can just sign them immediately. So it's kind of cheesy, I'm gonna be honest, but the game allows you to do that, and that's exactly what we'll do. Now, if we really wanted to be petty, we could sign GP here. We could also kidnap Bono, because as you can see, most of these racing engineers are on a 1-year contract. So you basically have your pick here. You can pick up Bono and GP if you really, really wanted to. But what we're going to do here is actually pick up Adami. And that's probably not a very, popular option. Let's put it like that. But the main reason why we're picking Adami here is because he's currently signed as engineer. And that way we don't have to build up affinity, because the affinity will already be built up. And that's kind of what we're doing here. Car 1's engineer also has a very short contract. So we can basically pick him up for free-ish. And again, here we just do the same. Financially, this is going to be a little bit costly, but I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. So a full kind of shift here where we're picking up 4 new staff members and a driver after the first 3 races is very unrealistic, but the game allows us to do it, and we are going to take advantage of that. Now, next up, we are going to get probably a couple of upgrades here going into the race. Name of the chassis, we're probably not going to get it ready for Australia. We'll have it ready for Japan. Same here with the sidepods and suspension, so let's just speed along until we get those parts. Here we are with our chassis. We're going to go ahead and manufacture it right away. And as I mentioned here, we do want to get it ready before we go to Suzuka. The only way we can really get that done is going to be to rush one of them. Basically, we're going to need to rush one chassis, make one normal. It's not really a huge deal, so let's just get that started right away. And other than that, we are going to start a new design project here, and I'm just going to get started on the rear wing. Now, generally here, I would like to use CFD time, probably on the rear wing. We could hold off with making this until we go into the next CFD period in 41 days. That wouldn't really be a huge problem to do, really. But I think we'll make one rear wing before we get there, and then we'll deal with the CFD time once we, get to the CFD time. Rear wing, going to be pretty simple and straightforward. We are going to go drag reduction, DRS, and medium speed. You can actually kind of sacrifice top speed if you really want to, but we're going to keep it as it is. I'm also keeping DRS delta up. In my previous videos, it's been a little bit back and forth on what I've been doing with DRS, but with the confidence changes now, DRS is actually definitely back on the menu, because qualifying a little bit lower because your DRS is bad and you don't get as much of a boost through the lap is no longer valid, because your confidence really quickly goes back to the baseline, and as such, qualifying slightly poorly to 3 places below where you were supposed to, and then getting some early overtakes, getting to peak confidence, and keeping that peak confidence for basically the entire race is no longer viable. So DRS investment is definitely something you want to do in your rear wing. And of course, we do want the medium speed. It's basically our main source of medium speed cornering. Now, we do have an extra engineer at the moment that we can also put on this, and that way we'll get it done before we go to Miami. And that works out just fine for me, so let's get that sorted. Now, in 3 days' time, we're going to get the side pods and the suspension. And we're going to have to manufacture both of these, which shouldn't be a huge deal, honestly. And we're probably going to rush both of them, is what I'm thinking. And the reason why we're going to want to rush both of these is because Suzuka is in 14 days. And as you can see, we can't actually get there in time if we don't. So we can do similarly to what we did with the chassis. We can rush one, then make one normally. That's going to take 13 days. That way we can get it done before Suzuka. So let's just get one rush order in for both of these parts, the side pod and the suspension. And that way we should have a new chassis. We should have new side pods and suspensions for both cars in Japan, meaning that we're only missing rear wing and front wing. And as you can see, in 9 days, we're actually getting that front wing, which is going to put us in a little bit of a pickle in terms of car parts, really. So we actually need to rush another side pod probably, or another suspension, and then try and squeeze in the front wings there. So it's going to be a little bit problematic with manufacturing, but shouldn't be a huge deal. Next up here, we do need to make that second underfloor. I've kind of delayed it a little bit here because I want to get the front wing and the rear wing kind of sorted. The next level underfloor is still going to be quite a boost, so we're just going to get that started. We're not going to really be rushed to get this done, honestly. We'll get it done when it gets done. And as you can see here, we can actually put an extra engineer on it if we really want to. I think we're fine with just running normally. We can make one then before we go into Miami. It's not going to be a huge deal. And with the final slot here, we're going to get started on making a bunch of side pod designs. We're probably going to make 3 of these. And the goal is basically just going to be to improve the top speed of our side pod. Currently, our side pod is focused like this, where it's just cooling and airflow, mainly to get a lot of cooling back. But if we can, we do want to get a little bit of top speed back, so we're going to try and implement that into the side pod. And this is probably something that we'll be using after 2, 3, 4 iterations maybe. So it's going to take quite a while before this one becomes viable to us. But it's going to get the job done later on in the season. And right now, we're just going to be waiting for that front wing. Melbourne is happening today. We have got that new underfloor, and it's not going to be, world-changing, honestly, as you can see. 4 and 6 places in low and high speed. But it is going to potentially, as I mentioned, help us getting to the top 10 a little bit easier. So that should be good. With that said, we're going to sim through this race, and then we're going to get started on getting prepped for Japan. Australia went okay. We scored a couple of points, nothing major, but the chassis has now been finished. And as I mentioned, we do need another one before the next race weekend, and we can actually make one just in time. We're going to get started on that. We are going to get another, well, the front wing design is going to get finished a little bit earlier than anticipated. But what we're going to have to do now is basically rush one of these two as our suspension and side pod get finished. We're going to go ahead and rush probably the side pod here. And again, it's kind of costly to do this. We do have a lot of money, but that doesn't really mean we need to throw away our money. It's a huge advantage, and we need to take advantage of it. We're going to go ahead here also and make another suspension in a normal fashion. because what we need to do here is just get this slot open so we can make the front wings, and that shouldn't be a problem. The design is ready in 4 days time. The slot is ready in 5 days time. If we rush the front wings, we'll have them in Japan, and basically we're going to have a very, very good car at that point. So let's get that sorted and set up. And of course, once this design is done, we are going to make another one immediately. It's just how the game is played, if you will. And in this case, we're just going to get started pretty quickly. Before we do though, let's just take a look at what we're actually getting. 99 in terms of low speed cornering, which is kind of what we are interested in. But if we go ahead now and make another one, let's see what this one has to offer. And again, the 2 ticks, 121. So still a pretty huge gain there. So let's just go ahead and get this one made. I think we're going to make it normally. It's not really a huge deal when we get it, really. As long as we get it before we go into Monaco, I'm going to be happy. Now, we can, of course, put engineers on it, and that's what we'll do. If we need to, we'll just redistribute them later on, probably when we start working on the rear wing. I don't think we're going to need to rush anything else here. Once we get one of every part, we'll be happy. And honestly, with that said, let's take our engineers back, because the one thing that we do need now is actually that rear wing. And when we can't get it done before China, we can definitely speed up the progress a little bit. Put that actually down the front wing again. There we go. We're happy. Next up, manufacturing complete. Side pods have been sorted. And with that, we now have the opportunity to make 2 front wings. And as long as we rush these, we'll have them ready before we go to Japan. Let's get that kind of ordered and sorted. And with all these parts made, we should have a completely new car for both cars, with the exception of the rear wing, which is going to come in a little bit later on. And that's not going to be a huge deal here. I'm going to get training set up. I'm going to get everything sorted before we go to Japan, and then we'll see where we stack up. So unfortunately, no driver or staff has come forward and said they want to join us, which is a little bit unfortunate. So we're still going to have Danny, Rick, and Sonoda here in Japan. However, every part has been made, and we're going to go ahead and put them on the cars. And these are going to have a pretty significant effect on our performance, particularly low speed cornering here is going to be nice to have. It's not going to really be race defining, but it's going to be a nice boost all together, if you will. Now, the only issue that we have with this right now is that we don't have any spares. I've started producing spares, as you can see, but for the race weekend here, we're going to have to pray that no one bins it into the wall, because that's going to become really, really expensive. Again, we can afford it, but it's not something I want to afford if I can avoid it. Now, with this, we're basically already one of the best teams in terms of cornering. We have very good tire preservation. DRS leaves a little bit to be decided, same with top speed, but that we can kind of rectify once we get that rear wing, and also a little bit more work on the side pods. So it's not really a bad situation all in all, and our car performance should be enough for a 1-2. Let's see if we can actually get maybe Rick a win before we unfortunately replace him. Let's see what Japan has to offer for us. Due to Japan being quite a wet race here, things didn't really go our way, at least not so far. With 8 laps till the end, we are one of the only cars that enters. Piastri is too. And as you can see, we're getting very, very down to the wire here. And I'm very curious if the other cars here are going to stay on these wets till the end. Because if they are, we might be at least snatching a podium here. And we also, as you can see here, Paris has had a little bit of an incident, which is putting down the order. But we have definitely not performed as good as we hoped. And of course, we have Sargent here, potentially causing us a bit of a problem and taking away what could have been a podium here with the virtual safety car. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point in this game. The Sargent cameo, if you will. But yeah, Sargent has retired, and I'm curious now what's going to happen. It is a virtual safety car. In terms of how much you save here with the virtual safety car, it is about 3 seconds. So, if Leclerc opts to pit, he's going to come up very, very close to Tsunoda and probably just overtake us on virtue of, well, a virtual safety car. It does suck though. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It does suck that virtual safety car happened, because it could potentially be what saves the wet run is quite a bit here. So let's see what we can do. We're 20 seconds behind. Quite a lot further behind here for Danny Rick. But with us now being on the correct tire and no one around us except for Piastri doing the same, I could see Rick probably maybe catching Verstappen here. Piastri is going to be a little bit of a harder nut to crack, but we are 2 to 3 seconds a lap faster at the moment. And as you can imagine, that leads to easy overtakes, in this case on the Mercedes of Russell. But yeah, 12 seconds behind the leader now. We did a, let's see, how are we doing in terms of lap times? We did a 37, 43 there from Leclerc. The restart definitely wasn't a good position for us. And Danny Ricciardo decides that he wants to give me one last disappointment. I don't know if that counts as a lockup if you kind of park like that. Look more like he parked up, if you ask me. We'll turn him back to aggressive, and he's going to have to re-overtake now both Alonso and Russell, and that's probably not him catching Verstappen. But Tsunoda's still in a good position now where we could potentially make something happen. Let's see what we can do here. Probably going to be one of the only races that we watch in this video. So let's see what Tsunoda can do here, as he is catching up to Norris in quite a rapid fashion. And we could see punctures here for the cars that have stuck out on the wets. So I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how that's gonna play out here. Now for Tsunoda here, I'm gonna have him just deploy. We need to clear Norris and also Sainz for that matter as quickly as possible. Every lap we're stuck behind another car is basically a lot of time lost. And we almost did do a Verstappen there and send Norris to the Shadow Realm. But yeah, the quicker we get behind these cars, the better. And kind of the same does kind of apply to Danny Rick as well. Let's see now. Can we clear the Ferrari in good time here? It is going to start pouring down again. The end here is actually going to end up being on a wet tire due to that virtual safety car. So Sargent screwed me over twice. That's the best way I can describe what Sargent did. He screwed me over twice there, because before the virtual safety car, it was supposed to end on basically, well, dry-ish. This could actually have us outside of the podium, because as you can see, track conditions have changed to wet. There's still 2 laps remaining, including this one. And since Sainz is on the correct tire, he is going to be faster than us. So let's just put ourselves on always defend. And we are going to deploy everything that we have here to try and stay ahead of him. Last lap. Can we secure second place? Or is Sargent going to give me a big middle finger? I think he might have given me a big middle finger here, because him crossing that virtual safety car has allowed the wet runners to get back into this. And you can kind of see that with both Norris and Sainz chasing us down. And even Russell here might get a little bit of a revenge on Danny Rick. So all I can hope for here is really just these guys fighting each other enough that we are safe. We're also getting up on a back marker here, which could make life a little bit worse even still. And looks like Sainz got kind of screwed over by that. Norris is still with us. He's going to overtake us here now, mainly just because we're on the wrong tire. Danny Rick has 2 cars here now chasing him down. Question now, can we hold on to this 3rd place until we get over the line? We should be able to, I would think. Just about. And we do. Can you do the same? You're probably going to get double overtaken here, I would think. But we do have a competitive car. In this case, the randomness of the race itself put us in a bad situation. But we'll have to see if we can keep this going. We'll get prepped for China and see if we can keep this performance up. Now, after the Japanese Grand Prix, this is, I think, the most purple page I've ever seen. And in this case, it's a lot of contracts. We also have the regulation vote. We even picked up a design center fire, which is going to be bad because it does shut down our production for 10 days. It does also affect the manufacturing capabilities, which is kind of bad, but I think we'll be able to deal with that. And the regulations this year are just wings. So I think we'll hit the low speed wing changes. Not really big deal which one you choose. But basically, this just makes research this year quite a lot easier. Let's just put it like that. Kadil has accepted the contract. We're going to sign him. We're also going to resign Adami. We are going to sign Sainz. Guess he got upset last race. Tondi. Basically, we're picking up half the Ferrari crew, getting Wheatley in here also. And it did cost us quite a lot of money, but even after this spending spree, we still have 20 million left in the bank. Which means that if we really, really wanted to right now, we could go ahead and pick up Alonso as well with Tsunoda. So if Tsunoda doesn't perform, we could pick up Alonso as well. We do have Sainz now, and currently he is happy. He's somewhat happy with the staff, which means that if we want to improve his staff opinion, we actually need to get rid of Spini, which would kind of suck. But the rest of the staff here, they're all good. And as you can see here, they are unhappy with facilities. They're unhappy with car performance. That is something that we can kind of solve down the line. They're also unhappy with the drivers. In this case, I would assume it's Tsunoda. But as mentioned, that's a solvable problem. And, well, the best way to solve it is going to be to get these things manufactured, get new things up and running. We are going to have a little bit of a mess here with when things get done, just due to the fact that, well, factory fire did happen. But other than that now, we're going to get started on the third thing you need to do to boost mentality, which is start building facilities. In our case, we're building helipads, we're building tour centers because they're cheap. And of course, we're also building a memorabilia room, not only because it is cheap, but because it also gives you a mentality boost. You can also, if you can afford it, upgrade Team Hub. And in this case, we can afford it, so we're going to get started on that. It too gives a mentality boost. So we'll be building basically the first three, maybe a little bit more Team Hub as we go. But that's going to keep mentality high. And as I mentioned, particularly for Tsunoda here, it puts his pace stats in the 90s. His accuracy gets up there, smoothness gets up there. And this makes him very, very competitive. So Tsunoda is still, can still make something happen. The science here, even with just positive, he's looking very, very promising. So let's see if we can get him up to enthusiastic as well. And it's probably going to require just upgrading the facilities a little bit more. And worst case scenario, we might need to replace Spini. But for the time being, things are perfectly fine. And as you can see, it's still lower end in terms of stats, but can't really complain too much. Now, China and also Miami is probably just going to be a walk in the park that we will have to deal with before we get those final new, well, rear wing, basically. Second edition front wing, second edition underfloor. And basically, I'm just going to start building up parts. Manufacturing spares is going to be the name of the game here. And until we get these designs done, there's not really much we can do and just go from race to race. So let's see what China has to offer. Let's see what Miami has to offer. Since we have continued upgrading facilities as they have kind of finished here, if you will, we now have basically a couple of upgrades into most of them. It is getting a little bit dangerous here for our finances. We're down to 14 million. But at this point, as long as we have a 5 million buffer, we should be fine. And because of the upgrades that we have done, we now see that even Carlos Sainz is up to almost 100 in most of his pace stats here, due to him too reaching enthusiastic. And as we upgrade more of our buildings and facilities, debuff is going to get one more minor. We currently do have temporary buffs from staff joining. I really should have signed Sainz first in order to get more buffs from more members of the staff joining. That's my fault. But it is what it is, and that is something you can learn from. Well, you can learn from my mistakes, so you don't make the same ones. But yeah, sign your drivers first before you sign higher rated staff. But with this said, China is on the menu. We don't really have any upgrades going into this, but we do have a very, very good cornering car. Just waiting for those final upgrades. Let's see how we perform here. After simulating China, we end up 3rd and 4th here. We're not too far off, 10 seconds, 12 seconds-ish off the lead. So we're definitely getting closer. And in the driver's stand, Sainz is 4th. Performed pretty well in the sprint. I believe we finished... No, we actually won the sprint, looking at the sprint wins here. So we didn't do too shabby here, all things considered. Constructors, we're now 4th place, 73 points. We basically have as many to catch up to McLaren, who's leading. Red Bull finds himself in 3rd, which is probably a little bit lucky. But the car is competitive at the moment. Sainz kind of lost out there also due to a pit stop. So it looks very, very good. We do need to get, again, second underfloor, second front wing, and the CFD that I want to do on the rear wing done. But once that is sorted, I think we'll have a very, very competitive car that can probably get stuff done. Now, in terms of facilities, as I mentioned, we're just going to keep on upgrading them until they reach level 5 or we hit our buffer, which is 5 million. And honestly, aside from upgrades, there's not really much that I need to report on, I feel. We're going to get that rear wing in 9 days. We're going to have it for one of the cars for Miami. It's probably going to be Sainz's car. But after that, we are also going to get an underfloor. So once we get to Imola, I guess that's when we have basically an almost new car. And once we get to Monaco, we should start seeing 1-2s for our team, which is going to be pretty significant. Now, in terms of spare parts here, I do try and go so that I have basically 4 side pods, underfloor, suspension, chassis. I like to go 6 rear wings, 6 front wings, and then basically if I have spare room, build up to 5 of each if I can. Basically when we have downtime like now. Basically, we do have a little bit of downtime right now in manufacturing because we need to wait until these designs are done. So 6 days, I need 1 slot. Just keep this one open so we can get that rear wing sorted before we go into Miami. That's not a huge deal. The rear wing design has been completed here, and as I mentioned, we are going to rush 1 for the race weekend itself. It is a sprint weekend, so we can't really do the trick where we have one ready for, say, quali. So let's just go ahead and rush 1 for the race weekend itself. And we're actually going to start another rear wing project because, as I mentioned, I do want to do a rear wing with CFD, just get a little bit of extra room into my parts. And again, rear wings, front wings, generally give a very, very good boost, or very big boost, if you will, to your parts. The underfloor is kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to cornering, which is why I like to use CFD on them, and then just normal design the other 3. But we are probably going to use the last 3 CFD periods on research. In our case, we only have 2 parts, which is going to make it a little bit easier. But in this case, we're going to invest 1 CFD period on the rear wing because I feel like we can't allow that to happen. And that's going to give us, hopefully, a huge DRS boost down the line, some top speed, and generally be, hopefully, worth it. That's mainly the main thing here. Now, I'm not too worried about getting this to any particular race. Having it before, well, in Canada would be nice. We do need to run 2 of these. Getting it before we go to Spielberg would be huge. And we're probably going to have to rush the final project to make that happen, but that's fine. Let's just get that CFD growing up and started here. And we are going to go ahead and manufacture the underfloor after this race weekend. Sidepods here, again, are developed ones. So we'll be making more designs down the line. But yeah, I think we have everything sorted. And as I mentioned here, at this point, you can also go ahead and sign Alonso, if you will. And if you do, you could potentially replace Speedy as well. He doesn't have a very high cost to terminate his contract, as you can see. So replacing him to have a huge mentality boost for everyone could be the play. But it depends on how you want to play it. For me, having 1 good and 1 little bit worse driver is fine. For now, though, I am going to speed through a few more races. We are going to start compacting the second half of the season here. Basically, the videos focus very much on the start of the season, which is when we put the car together, things to consider, things like that. So the last part here is just going to be me breezing through the season, probably giving an update every 6-7 races or so. We still have a couple of upgrades, but apart from that, it's going to be an update every 6-7 races with how we are performing. So Miami offered us another 3rd and 4th place with Max Verstappen winning, which is bad. But we have now the final edition underfloor. We'll have it ready for Imola, and then we'll take a look at how the car looks with the new rear wing. Now, we do also have some damage. In particular, the suspensions for both cars have perished, so we do need to make some new ones. And also, we do finish the side pods here at the same time. Now, we're going to use 2 design slots there to just make a little bit of a better side pod, a little bit of a better chassis. Because again, neither of these pieces are affected by the regulation change, so we might as well use design. Research would be fine as well. But that will take effect next year. We do need to just do it in case we need a little bit of extra oomph this year, and that's why I'm doing it like I am. And as you can see already, after just doing one project, we're barely losing anything in terms of performance by making a competitive side pod here in terms of top speed. And we're going to do this design, then probably one more. I just don't want to lose any engine cooling if I can, because we are running Red Bull engines, which is problematic. Let's just put it like that. Running Red Bull engines, which is a little bit problematic in the sense that they have very poor durability. Now, as I mentioned, also, we're going to do probably 3 chassis designs. They do give us a lot of cornering. They give us a lot of top speed. And while these numbers might seem small, do these projects 2-3 times, and then they will actually be very, very beneficial to us. That's what we'll be doing now. The second front wing is going to be done here in a couple of weeks. The rear wing here, we're going to have to make another one, of course, once this one is done. That one will also be done in a few weeks' time. So let's just head into Imola. There isn't really much to say. We'll take a look at the car before we go there and kind of see what we can expect from the car this year. Enthusiasm is at an all-time high. And of course, we're going to continue upgrading our buildings here. Our mobility room does need another little push. Financially, we are getting more and more into a troublesome area. So we do need to keep that in mind too. But with our mobility room maxed out, that shouldn't be a huge problem. And of course, again, the 10 mentality boost here is going to be pretty nice to have. So here we are with the car's performance after getting those upgrades. We now have, tier 2, if you will, of everything. The final upgrade for the underfloor. We're actually going to go ahead and also get started on a couple of spares because that would be good. But generally now we're good on all parts. We have a lot of spares. We are going to get, of course, the new front wings in actually just 3 days, so we don't really need to make more of those. But for Monaco now, we're also pretty well set up. We're first in all 3 cornering statistics. We're 4th in top speed, 5th in tire preservation. So as you can imagine, right now, the car should be incredibly competitive, even against the Red Bull. And as I mentioned here earlier with the side pod, we can get about 0.7 kph from that alone once we get a couple of more designs going. And that will be enough. That will be very, very close to Red Bull in top speed as well. Right now, we have them pretty well beat on every cornering statistic. So once the rear wing and the front wing also give us a little bit more, that should be enough. But it's looking very, very promising so far. And let's see here what we can do at Imola. It's probably going to be the last race we focus on before I'm going to speed up progression a little bit. So let's see what we do here. We're expected to do 1-2. Let's see if our drivers can live up to it. Monaco, as usual, when you simulate games, is quite weird. And this time is no exception. We end up 1st and 3rd, taking our first win for the season, but we lapped Verstappen. And we have Norris basically 5 seconds off being lapped as well. Well, 8 seconds, more like it. But with this, we are now finally starting to catch up to the cars ahead. Tsunoda, close to 100 points, Sainz 125. And as you can see now, we go up to 3rd place with just 50 points behind McLaren, who has actually been performing fairly well. And it's quite rare to see this. It's kind of been a weird start to the season here for me. Red Bull is probably going to be a little bit further behind, probably a little bit further ahead than they are in my case. Because as you can see here, McLaren has won a race. I've been on podiums a lot. Red Bull has won 3, Ferrari has won 3, and now we have won 1. So I'm looking forward to seeing if we can keep things going here. And honestly, at this point, as I mentioned probably 5 times in this video, I'm going to start summarizing. So I think we'll get back to it every 5 or so races. Because right now, the only thing that I really need to do is get the rear wing, which we're getting in 3 days. And I might as well just spend a couple of minutes here talking about what you should focus on towards the end of the year in terms of development. Because this is probably a good place really to have that conversation, if you will. My internal concerns, I guess we'll approve the shutdown. Nothing really much I can do about that. But yeah, in terms of what you want to do for the rest of the season here, if you feel your car is competitive, if you are winning, then you are fine with starting research. In my case, however, we don't need to, but I would probably start research once you get to Silverstone at the latest, just to be more competitive. We still have 4 races to go there until we get there, though, so in our case, it's not really anything we need to rush. But, as you can imagine, it's going to be important to get that sorted as early as possible. Now, with the rear wing finish here, we're still going to have to wait for the shutdown to finish, or shutdown to sort itself before we can actually start a new design cycle. We'll just allow that to happen. And let's see here. There was no sign of structural damage, but basically, as mentioned, I hate that you have to go an extra day, because I'll sort this out later. It's acceptable for now. I do hate that you have to go an extra day on that event before you're actually allowed to do things again. And apparently, I'm still not allowed to do things. Okay. But yeah. I went one day too far there. Okay, I'm gonna have to now emergency manufacture these if I want them for this race. And honestly, I don't think it's gonna be that much of a huge change. So I'm just gonna make 4 of these normally, and that will be us sorted with rear wings going into the future. Now, as I mentioned, we do need to make another rear wing design, however, because we use CFD time. So to get the most out of that CFD, we need to make another one. And it's not going to be a huge upgrade compared to the ones that we currently are making, but it's going to be a sizable upgrade. And it's going to definitely move us up the order in a lot of things. Probably going to be the last rear wing design that we do. I'm actually going to put 6 engineers on it to get it done as quickly as possible. And we're still going to make side pods, chassis, and suspension designs here. As I mentioned, probably 3 or 4 of each with the same sliders that we had initially, with the exception of the side pods. And as long as we get to that final design, I'll take a look at it and show you the difference in terms of performance. So that's going to be the plan. I know that this video has been a little bit poorly structured so far, and that's just because it's been a while since I last made one, so I'm getting back into it slowly again. Apologies for that. But yeah, let's speed along. Next 4 races here. Let's see if we can close that gap to McLaren. By the time we get to Silverstone, we finally have win here for Tsunoda. We have both cars on the podium. Verstappen had a bad one, which is huge for us. The same can be said for Norris. And we are getting closer to catching him in the Drivers' Championship. And he's actually been more of a nuisance than Verstappen has been so far. Constructors, however, we do take the lead here. And this is basically the halfway point of the season. So it's a little bit later than I kind of anticipated. This has been a very weird season so far altogether. And I kind of regret that we're going to be condensing this one. But we're still very, very much ahead of our mentals, which is huge to see. And we do have a bit of a small lead here. Now, regulation vote here, splitting changes, I don't care, honestly. For fastest point, it's fine. But at this point, we have another issue that we do need to deal with. And while our car is very, very quick, we are seeing that Tsunoda has been a little bit behind science in performance. And if you are struggling at this point, if you have the finances, it might be worth it to switch him out with Alonso, give him a 1, maybe 2-year contract, so you can actually replace him once the time comes. But I think in this case, we will be fine. The issue that I do have to kind of mention here, though, is not really related to parts, but kind of is. Your powertrain is going to be a little bit of a problem, in particular because we are using Red Bull engines and we do struggle a little bit with our cooling. We are probably going to need to buy another ERS by the end of the year. We might also have problems needing to buy extra gearboxes and engines. So at this point, try and save up a little bit of money. Also, get started on your research. In my case here, I put the safety period into the front wing. I'm going to put the next safety period into the rear wing. And we are also getting here very close to the end of development, basically for extra parts to the side pod. Basically, it's going to be done here. We want to do another chassis and another suspension. But after that, we're done with the science for this year, and we're going to go full on into research. But halfway point-ish of the season, we have taken the lead. It's looking very, very promising. Let's see if we can keep this up for the next 6 races. By the time we get to Baku and race 17, we do have a almost 40-point leader on McLaren, who have been very, very strong this season. Apparently, nabbing Wheatley from Red Bull was enough to destroy them, and the same can actually be said for Ferrari to some lesser degree. And as you can see here, Norris is still in charge of the championship. There's 4 points between him and Sainz, and Tsunoda is in third. He's performed good, well enough. I have gone ahead here and given him a new contract. We'll have to see if he signs it. But we've also now gotten the last couple of upgrades on the car, and I thought we'd take a quick look at them before we finish off this year. In particular, we have gotten that chassis, as I mentioned. This has been basically our first upgrade. Then we did 3 designs that have slowly but surely improved the chassis to a point where we now gain basically the numbers that we see here are how much we've improved, not how much we've lost. So let's just install that on car 1 for a second. And as you can see here, compared to that initial chassis that we made, we gained 0.23 kph, a little bit DRS, decent chunk of cornering, some cooling, and that is actually pretty huge. Now, we're going to be seeing something similar here with the side pods, particularly in the top speed department. I just like to do it like this. It's easier on the eyes to look at the bluish numbers here. So the main thing that we're getting from the side pod upgrade here is top speed. However, what we could have done, and what you can do, particularly if you have a problem with your drivers crashing, mine has had a couple of minor scuffles, nothing too serious so far, although I can feel it coming. Basically, if your drivers have been crashing a lot, you can sacrifice some top speed to get about 7% more engine cooling instead. Basically, just lower your top speed slider instead, get engine cooling, get cornering. That's fine too. In our case, I just picked the top speed here because it's going to bring us closer to Red Bull. And lastly, the suspension here, we just finished that. We've done the exact same thing, but we have been improving it. And as you can see, mainly here, we've gone a lot more tire preservation, 4.4%, some cornering, and also some top speed. And that's basically been it, what we've been doing in terms of upgrades. However, as you can see here, other teams have caught up. We're no longer the best team for high-speed corners. We are close in top speed. We're close in DRS. But definitely other teams out there that are giving us a bit of a fight. McLaren, not really at the moment. Have to give Norris credit for performing as well as he has. And if we take a look at the Red Bulls, they have caught up to us in top speed. They've caught up to us in medium speed. And also in low speed. So actually right now, both of our cars are very much almost the same. They're down to 5.6 kilograms, which is pretty low for an AI. And as you can see here, the McLarens have gone the other way. So yeah, I'm kind of impressed here, really, with the Red Bulls. 5.6 kilograms overweight is not a lot for them. But yeah, we have not 9 races. I think it is 7 races. 3, 6, 7, 8, including Baku. 8 races remaining here. I think we will be winning this season as kind of we intended. So we are going to be beating Red Bull with a sister team, which is going to be funny. I think that should happen unless we have some pretty bad crashes. Driving Championship is almost still up for grabs, but Norris should be falling off. We could potentially see Verstappen in making a little bit of a comeback. But as we've been able to keep Carlos here at peak enthusiasm for the entire season, I don't think he'll have too many problems keeping Verstappen at bay unless we get like a double DNF. Financially, I've also been saving up a lot of money here. We have backed up to 25 million. We haven't really been upgrading any buildings too much. We kind of stopped with the operations once they reached level 5. Actually forgot to upgrade the tool center here. Don't do that. Mistake, everyone. And we are upgrading the team up to 4. Now, if you have talents, then upgrading racing can be very, very profitable and good. But let's face it, Tsunoda is not going to grow a lot. So I've kind of not prioritized this in exchange for upgrading Team Hub once more. And also, again, we do have the finances to upgrade it, but since we are running Red Bull powered cars, potentially we are going to have to buy extra ERSs and in worst case scenario, an extra engine. So I'm building up a little bit buffer just to be on the safe side. Let's see what the last, quarter of the season has to offer, and hopefully we'll be able to take the Driver Championship as well as the Constructors. So as I mentioned just a little while ago, we were most likely going to need to buy some ERSs before we get to the end of this year, and it turns out that is in fact the truth here, because in the last race in Mexico, both of our drivers picked up a severe damage to their ERS, a major fault. And with the other ERSs literally being driven into the absolute ground here, that means that if we want to be competitive for the last few races here, which there's 4 of, we're going to have to buy some new ERSs to make that possible. That's going to cost us 5 million. I've been still pretty saving money, let's just put it like that. That shouldn't be an issue. And if we take a look here at the standings now, we are 100 points clear of McLaren. In theory, we could still survive without buying new parts. In theory. But Norris has fallen 55 points behind. I would like to get Tsunoda up to second. And again, generally here, the McLaren car decisions have been pretty puzzling. But I think what we have to do, as mentioned here, is buy new ERSs. It's going to cost about 5 million, at 2.5 million per. And financially, that's not really going to be a problem. Because if we take a look at the finances here, where is my cost cap? There it is, 17 million remaining. We have 2 months to go. I think we'll be fine. Now, in terms of research, because we have been doing quite a bit of research, we have actually started what is going to be the second to last research project, which means that we just need 4 million to do another set of research, which should be perfectly fine. We have used one CFD period on the front wing, same sliders as before. We used one CFD project on the rear wing, again, kind of same sliders as before. And other than that, I'm focused on side pods, suspension, and chassis. And we're probably going to put that last CFD period into the underfloor just in order to kind of get prep for next season. It's kind of what I would recommend. That way, once you start next season, you can use the initial CFD period on, say, your chassis, your side pod, your suspension, whichever you feel is lagging the most behind. Even your front wing and rear wing is fine, but it just gets you set up a little bit better going into next year. With that said, though, as mentioned here, we are going to have to buy a couple of ERSs for the last 4 races. Let's see if we can keep this up and get Tsunoda into second place. So with the ERS penalty of 20 places, I did not expect this to actually do well here, but Sainz basically did lost the first challenge to some degree, and he did end up winning, Norris in 5th. And I think this has kind of settled everything once and for all. We are going to take the title here ahead of the sister team. I don't think there's anyone that's going to be able to deny us that, with now fresh ERS in the car. 3 races remaining. Let's see if we can get Tsunoda that second place, but it's looking very, very promising. The final race in Abu Dhabi has seen its conclusion. We pull off a 1-2 in the final race of the season. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough here for Tsunoda to get himself into second place. He's had a DNF, one proper DNF, and also 2 half DNFs where he's picked up damage and ended up outside of the points. And other than that, it's actually been a really, really good season. Sainz has found himself on the podium in every single race this year, I believe. I don't know if that math works. I believe the podium and the race wins are separate, but now I'm questioning myself. So I believe it works like that, but I might be mistaken. But with that said, it's been a really, really good season for us. We did manage to do what we wanted. Probably wouldn't have been able to do without Sainz. And we ended up 133 points out of McLaren. I think it's the first time I've seen Red Bull not finish second, which again probably is a combination of us nabbing the staff, in this case Wheatley, depending on who Red Bull picked up. It could actually have been a pretty significant mentality buff or debuff. So why don't we check that out at the end of the season? We've been able to keep the mentality high for both of our drivers, which has been huge. And as I mentioned earlier, this video is going to be revisited probably sometime next week, maybe this weekend, depending on what I have time for. It's been a tough couple of weeks, which is why you haven't seen anything from me. Not going to go too deeply into it, but it's been a couple of difficult weeks. Let's just put it like that. But yeah, we'll be taking a look at Ignacio Uredes, probably butchering his name, but we'll be taking a look at his editor because he's added extra difficulties that I'm looking forward to testing out. And we're going to be using the save as kind of a... Basically, we're going to be doing this again with those difficulties and see basic compare development for AI. That's going to be the main goal. But definitely, you can beat Red Bull with the sister team pretty easily, to be fair, though. Probably would have been a lot easier if I manually did some races here, because I feel like we performed worse than we should have quite a few races this year. And of course, the fact that the car has been eating powertrain components hasn't been too good for us either. Now, as I mentioned before we call it here, I do want to see who Red Bull picked up. They did actually pick up Perron, so they picked up an 82 rated Spawn Director instead of the one that they currently had. That probably did have a negative effect on their mentality. I would assume so. Wondering what Ferrari did. Did they pick up ours? Yeah, we basically swapped. Oh, we didn't actually, because Joel here is not one of ours. Let's just put it like that. Where is he? I don't remember. been a very, very long day. So apologies. But yeah, that's it. My video where we do the 1 season challenge with RB. I'll be going through all of these hopefully in time. Around the Grid should be back maybe tomorrow, maybe in a couple of days. I'll have to see what I have time for. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. It's been a little bit of time here, so I'm a little bit rusty. This video is probably going to have a little bit of weird pacing. So please let me know what you think about it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.